There is one belief that stops so many people from ever starting a garden. They believe that if they want to grow their own food, they'll have to spend hours every week watering, weeding, fertilizing, and constantly taking care of their plants. They imagine gardens that demand attention every single day. Miss just a few days, and all that effort will disappear. But that is not entirely true, because there are some plants that almost seem to prefer being left alone. They still grow when you're busy. They still produce harvests, even when you forget to water them once in a while. They keep growing, even if you only have time to check the garden on weekends. And that is also the secret of many experienced gardeners. They don't choose the hardest plants to grow. They choose the smartest plants. Plants that can quietly grow, tolerate beginner mistakes, and still give you harvests that surprise you. On today's list, there are plants that can give you a harvest in just a few weeks. Some will keep producing for months, and especially the plant in the #1 spot almost goes against everything most people think about gardening. Many people don't believe a vegetable can do this the first time they hear about it. That is also why experienced gardeners love it so much. So make sure you stay until the end of the video, because that final plant may completely change the way you think about growing food at home. Now, let's count down 15 vegetables and edible plants that practically grow themselves, helping even the busiest gardeners enjoy abundant harvests with very little maintenance. Number 15, green onions. There is one vegetable that many people accidentally throw away every week, while experienced gardeners intentionally save it. That vegetable is green onions. If you have ever bought a bunch of green onions from the grocery store, there's a good chance you cut off the white root ends and toss them into the trash without thinking twice. But the interesting thing is, that part that seems useless can actually become one of the easiest plants to grow in the entire garden. Just place the rooted ends in a glass of water, or plant them directly into a small pot of soil. Within just a few days, new green shoots will begin to appear. It is one of the fastest results you can see when you start gardening. And the feeling of cutting the first green onions you grew yourself always brings a very special kind of joy. But what makes green onions truly deserve a place on this list is not just how quickly they grow. It is because they almost never seem to give up. Forgot to water them for a day? Most of the time, they will recover. Too busy all week to go out to the garden? They keep growing. Cut off most of the green tops for dinner? Before long, new leaves will grow back to replace them. That is why so many people see green onions as one of the most forgiving plants for beginners. They don't require much space. A small pot on the porch, balcony, or a sunny windowsill is enough to give you fresh green onions for months. And there are very few vegetables that get used as often as green onions. A little chopped green onion can make eggs taste better. Make a bowl of soup more fragrant. Add flavor to salads, baked potatoes, noodles, fried rice, or sandwiches. This is a plant you will actually use, not just something you grow because it looks nice. The best part is, every time you cut a handful of fresh green onions for dinner, it almost doesn't feel like you are harvesting. It simply becomes a very natural part of everyday life, and that is the sign of a plant that truly fits busy people. Low maintenance, very little worry, but always giving you small rewards that make you want to keep gardening. Number 14, bush beans. There is something many new gardeners do not realize. Not every plant that gives you a lot of food also requires a lot of effort. Bush beans are one of the clearest examples of that, unlike pole beans, which need trellises, tying, and regular training to guide the vines upward. Bush beans are much simpler. You just sow the seeds, water them consistently in the beginning while they establish, and after that, the plants almost take care of the rest themselves. Before long, small flowers begin to appear, then the first bean pods start forming, and before you even realize it, you are picking handful after handful. That is one of the most satisfying feelings about growing bush beans. Every time you step into the garden, it seems like there are always a few more beans waiting for you to harvest. Another reason people love this plant is how quickly it grows. Many varieties only need about 2 months before they begin producing. That is fast enough to keep new gardeners from losing patience, but also long enough for the plants to grow strong and produce well. Bush beans also do not take up much space. They stay compact, making them perfect for small garden beds, raised beds, or even large containers. You do not need a huge garden to get a meaningful harvest of beans. Just a few healthy plants can provide plenty of fresh food for several meals. What makes bush beans especially suitable for busy gardeners is their consistency. You do not need to check them every single day. You do not need to keep pruning them. You do not need to build extra trellises or adjust climbing vines. The plant simply grows quietly, flowers, sits spots, and keeps doing that for weeks. Number 13, leaf lettuce. There is one mistake many beginner gardeners often make. They think harvesting vegetables means pulling up the entire plant. But with leaf lettuce, the better you understand how to harvest it, the more it gives back to you. That is exactly what makes this vegetable one of the smartest choices for busy gardeners. Instead of constantly sowing new seeds to keep fresh greens coming, with one planting, you can harvest multiple times from the same plant. The secret is in the way you cut. Do not pull up the entire plant. Simply harvest the larger outer leaves, leave the center intact. A few days later, new tender leaves will begin to appear again. Then more leaves, and before you know it, you have another harvest ready. That is why so many people call this the cut and come again method. It is also one of the vegetables that gives you the fastest sense of reward. You do not have to wait for months to see results. In a short time, a whole bed of lettuce can be ready to bring into the kitchen. A little for a salad, a few leaves for a sandwich, or simply harvest some right before dinner. There is something special about stepping outside, cutting a few leaves, still fresh from the garden, and bringing them into the house. Another advantage is that leaf lettuce does not require much space. A container on the patio, a small bed along a walkway, or a corner of a raised bed is enough to provide fresh greens for weeks. Most importantly, leaf lettuce does not force you to work on its schedule. If you need a little today, you simply harvest exactly what you need. The rest keeps growing, no waste, no need to harvest too much all at once. And that is exactly the kind of flexibility busy gardeners appreciate. Because sometimes, the best thing about a garden is not getting a huge harvest all at once. It is always having something fresh waiting for you whenever you step outside. Number 12, Swiss chard. If there were one vegetable that could be described as the easiest going friend in the garden, it would probably be Swiss chard. It does not ask for much, and it rarely gives you much to worry about. A few hot days, it keeps growing. Temperatures start rising when other leafy greens begin to fade. It quietly produces more leaves. That is why many experienced gardeners always leave a space for Swiss chard, even when they have plenty of other options. What makes this plant different is not just the eye-catching color of its stems, although it must be said that those shades of red, yellow, orange, or pink can make it look almost as beautiful as an ornamental plant. Its real value lies in the way it produces. You do not need to pull up the entire plant. You also do not need to keep sowing it over and over again. Just pick the older outer leaf. Leave the young center growth intact. Then let the plant continue doing its work. Before long, new leaves will appear again. Then more leaves. It is almost as if the plant always has another harvest waiting for you. That is why many people can harvest from the same plant for months. Another advantage many people do not realize is its flexibility. Some days, you may only need a few tender young leaves for a salad. You can harvest early. Other days, you may want larger leaves for sautéing, steaming, or adding to soup. You just wait a few more days. Whichever way you choose, the plant keeps growing. It does not force you to harvest at the perfect moment. It does not make you rush because you are afraid of missing the crop. It is simply ready whenever you need it. And that is exactly what busy gardeners want from a garden. Not plants that constantly demand attention, but plants tough enough to adapt to your schedule. Maybe that is why so many people, after growing Swiss chard once, continue making space for it in future seasons. Not because it is the flashiest vegetable, but because it does its job so well while asking for almost nothing in return. Number 11, kale. Some plants make gardeners watch the weather forecast with worry, but kale does not seem to care much. Cold weather, it keeps growing. A light frost arrives? Many people even say that is when kale tastes best. Unpredictable weather, it simply adapts. That is why kale has long been considered one of the most reliable vegetables you can grow. It is not the fastest growing plant. It is not the most beautiful plant in the garden. But if there is one vegetable that gives you peace of mind, many people would choose kale. Once it has established, your job becomes incredibly simple. You do not need to pull up the whole plant. You do not need to keep replanting. You do not need to stand next to it all the time checking on it. Just harvest the older leaves from the bottom, leave the center intact, and let the plant do the rest. Before long, new leaves will appear, then more leaves. That is why kale can keep producing for months from a single planting. What is interesting is that many people underestimate this plant when they first start growing it. At first, it is just a small seedling. It grows rather slowly. It does not look like anything special. But as the weeks go by, you realize you are cutting more and more leaves. Until one day, you have a kale plant so large that it seems ready for dinner at almost any time. That is a feeling not many vegetables can give you. In addition to its ability to produce continuously, kale is also known for its nutritional value. It contains plenty of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, which is why it has long been a favorite vegetable for many families. But perhaps what truly makes kale stand out is not its nutrition. It is its stability. Life always has busy weeks, trips, days when you barely have time to step into the garden, and it is comforting to know that there is still a plant quietly growing while you are busy with everything else. No complaining, no demanding, just quietly growing and waiting until you need it. That is exactly what experienced gardeners are always looking for. Not plants that need perfect care, but plants strong enough to adapt to your life. Number 10, cucumbers. There is a moment almost every gardener has experienced. You step into the garden in the morning and think to yourself, I just checked this plant yesterday, but overnight there are a few new cucumbers hanging from the trellis. That is exactly what makes cucumbers one of the most rewarding plants to grow. They grow quickly, and once they begin producing fruit, there always seems to be something new to harvest. Of course, cucumbers still need the basics. Enough sunlight, consistent watering, and a trellis or fence to climb. But once they have grabbed on and started climbing, you will see why so many people make room for them every season. Tiny tendrils keep searching for something to hold on to. The vines stretch higher each day. Yellow flowers appear one after another. Then, small cucumbers begin forming right behind the blossom. What is interesting is that cucumbers do not seem to like waiting around. If you harvest regularly, the plant often responds by continuing to produce more fruit, almost as if it wants to keep the cycle going. That is why many gardeners make a habit of walking around the cucumber trellis every day, not because they are forced to, but because they know there will almost always be a few cucumbers at the perfect size. Another reason cucumbers are great for small gardens is their ability to use vertical space. Instead of sprawling all over the ground, you can let them climb a trellis. The leaves create a cool green wall, while the cucumbers hang beneath them, easy to see and easy to harvest. Not only does vertical growing save space, it also helps keep the fruit cleaner, improves airflow, and often makes the plants easier to manage. And then one day, you open the refrigerator and realize that almost every meal could use a few slices of fresh cucumber. In a salad, on a sandwich, made into pickles, or simply sliced and eaten on a hot summer day. That is when you understand why this plant appears in so many gardens. Not because it is rare, but because it always feels worth growing. You put in a little effort in the beginning, and for much of the summer after that, the plant keeps paying you back. Number 9, cherry tomatoes. If you have ever been disappointed by large tomato plants, you are not alone. Maybe the plant grew strong, thick stems, green leaves, flowers everywhere. But then, the fruit was fewer than you expected, or they ripened very slowly. Sometimes they cracked, developed, blossom end rot, or ran into all kinds of problems before you ever got to harvest them. That is why so many gardeners, after a few seasons of experimenting, eventually come back to cherry tomatoes. Not because they are smaller, but because they make almost everything easier. They usually grow faster, flower earlier, set more fruit. And most importantly, they keep producing long after many large tomato varieties have started slowing down. That is what makes this plant special. You do not just get one harvest. You get something closer to a long harvest season. At first, it is just a few small clusters. Then a few days later, another cluster appears, and so it continues with the plant constantly producing new tomatoes. At some point, you may find yourself carrying a small bowl every time you step into the garden, not to harvest everything, but just to pick the ripe tomatoes for that day. The interesting thing is that with cherry tomatoes, the biggest job is sometimes simply harvesting. If you leave ripe fruit on the plant for too long, there may be even more waiting the next day. One healthy plant can easily produce hundreds of tomatoes in a single season. That is a level of productivity that very few vegetables can match. Not only that, cherry tomatoes are also known for adapting better than many large tomato varieties. When the weather changes unpredictably or temperatures rise and fall, they often keep producing steadily. That is why so many beginners succeed with cherry tomatoes in their very first season. You also do not need a large garden, a good-sized container, a sunny corner, or a small patio with a simple tomato cage. You can provide fresh tomatoes for months, and then there will be mornings when you simply walk past the plant, pick one tomato, then another, until you realize you have just eaten an entire handful right there in the garden. Maybe that is why cherry tomatoes rarely go to waste. They are not the kind of vegetable you have to force yourself to use. They simply show up at the right time, in a salad, at dinner, or as a fresh snack picked straight from the plant. Number 8, sweet potatoes. When people talk about sweet potatoes, most think only of the roots hidden underground, and that is completely understandable. But because of that, many people miss one of the biggest advantages of this plant. Sweet potatoes are one of the most independent plants you can grow. Once they have rooted and started growing, they require very little attention. While many other vegetables need regular care, sweet potato vines quietly spread day by day. They crawl across the ground, weave into one another, and gradually cover the bare soil. At first glance, you may think they are just simple vines, but in reality, they are quietly doing more than you realize. The thick layer of leaves helps cover the soil. It keeps moisture in the ground longer after watering, and it reduces direct sunlight hitting the soil, making it harder for weeds to grow. That means you spend less time weeding, less time maintaining, and more time enjoying your garden. That is why sweet potatoes are so highly valued in low-maintenance gardens. They do not try to draw attention to themselves. They do not make you impatiently check every day to see how much they have grown. They simply do their work quietly, week after week. The foliage becomes greener. The vines grow longer. While beneath the soil, the sweet potatoes are growing where you cannot see them. Perhaps the most interesting part of growing sweet potatoes is the waiting. You do not know exactly what is happening under that layer of soil until harvest day. When you gently lift the plant, you begin to see the sweet potatoes appear one by one. And many people share the same feeling. They are always surprised because the number is often greater than they imagine. Even a modest planting area can produce a meaningful harvest. That is why sweet potatoes have long been one of the favorite food crops in home gardens. And what many people do not know is it is not just the roots. Even the young leaves can be used in many dishes. A small extra gift this plant gives the gardener. Sweet potatoes are not the kind of plant that gives you an instant reward. They teach patience, but in return, they require very little attention along the way. You just need to give them a good start. Then let time do the rest. Number 7, collard greens. Some vegetables require you to keep an eye on them all the time. The weather changes just a little, or you forget to care for them for a few days, and they begin to wilt, yellow, or stop growing. But collard greens are completely different. This is one of the leafy greens known for its toughness. It does not care too much whether today is hot or cool. And it does not easily give up just because growing conditions are no longer perfect. Maybe that is why so many gardeners see it as one of the most dependable plants in the entire garden. Once it has rooted and established, it seems to have one main goal: to keep producing new leaves. You do not need to sow more seeds every few weeks. You do not need to constantly replace old plants with new ones. Just take a walk through the garden when needed. Snap off the large lower leaves and leave the center intact. A few days later, new leaves appear again, then more leaves. In this way, the same plant can continue producing for months. That is the kind of gardening busy people want. Instead of starting over from the beginning, the garden keeps bringing food to you. Another advantage is resilience. While some leafy greens are quite sensitive to changes in weather, collards often recover very well after difficult periods. That is also why many people do not need to worry too much if they are too busy to go out to the garden for a few days. The plant is still there, still growing, still waiting for you to come back and harvest. Maybe what makes collards so loved is not that they are flashy, but that they do exactly what gardeners hope they will do. Stable, tough, low demanding, and always ready for one more harvest. Sometimes the best plants are not the ones that surprise you every day. They are the ones you can almost forget are there, because they have been quietly doing their job all along. Number 6, okra. For most vegetables, summer is often the biggest test. Temperatures rise, soil dries out faster, you have to water more often, and many plants begin to slow down or produce less. But okra reacts in a completely different way. The hotter it gets, the more it seems to enjoy itself. While many plants are just trying to get through the heat, okra is only beginning to enter its strongest growth period. That is one reason so many gardeners make space for it every season, especially because summer is also one of the busiest times of the year. You go on vacation, children are out of school, schedules change. You do not have time every day to spend hours in the garden. Fortunately, okra does not ask for that. Once its root system is well established, the plant begins to show one advantage not many vegetables have: drought tolerant. Its deep roots help it find water better than many other vegetables. That does not mean you should completely ignore it. But if you occasionally miss a watering, okra will usually keep growing without too many problems. That is exactly what busy gardeners appreciate. A plant strong enough to adapt to your schedule, instead of forcing you to follow its schedule. But perhaps what really makes okra stand out begins after the plant starts producing pods. The more you harvest, the more it keeps producing new pods. Every time you pick the young pods at the right stage, you are almost encouraging the plant to produce another round. And in this way, harvesting can continue for weeks, even months. That is the kind of productivity every gardener wants. Not one large harvest and then the end, but new pods waiting for you each time you step into the garden. Another bonus is that okra often has fewer serious pest and disease problems than many other vegetables. That means you spend less time dealing with problems and more time enjoying the harvest. Maybe that is the best thing about this plant. It does not try to make gardening complicated. Just give it sun, a good start, and harvest it at the right time once in a while. Most of the rest, it will do itself. Number 5, zucchini. There is a funny story many gardeners tell each other every summer. They say, during zucchini season, you should remember to lock your car doors. Not because you are afraid someone will steal something, but because you are afraid someone will secretly leave a few extra zucchinis inside. It may sound exaggerated, but that saying exists for one very simple reason. Zucchini can produce so much that it sometimes exceeds what one family can eat. Just one healthy plant can keep producing fruit throughout the season. 20 fruits, 30 fruits, maybe even more if conditions are favorable. The important thing is that amount of harvest does not come with an equal amount of work. You do not need to prune constantly. You do not need to spend hours each day taking care of it. You do not need complicated techniques. Just give the plant a sunny location, well-draining soil, water when needed, and enough space for the leaves to spread. After that, the plant almost does everything itself. It grows very quickly, produces bright yellow flowers, and only a few days later, the first zucchinis begin to appear. The interesting thing is that zucchini is not the kind of plant that gives you one harvest and then finishes. You harvest one fruit, a few days later, another one appears, then a few more. It is almost as if every time you pick one, the plant immediately gets to work making the next one. That is why many gardeners have the habit of checking their zucchini plants almost every day. Not because the plant needs care, but because they do not want to miss the fruits when they are at their best size. If left too long, a zucchini can grow so fast it surprises you. And that is also another advantage for busy people. If you cannot get out to the garden for a few days, the plant will not stop growing just because it is waiting for you. It keeps flowering, keeps setting fruit, keeps producing more. Very few vegetables give such a clear feeling of being rewarded. You invest very little effort at the beginning, but in return, you get harvests that continue for almost the entire season. That is also why, after growing zucchini once, many people no longer want to leave it out of their garden, because it is hard to find a plant that is both so easy to care for and so generous. Number 4, rosemary. Some plants always make you worry. Is the soil moist enough today? Do I need to fertilize this week? Are those slightly yellow leaves a problem? But rosemary is different. In fact, many gardeners spend more time worrying about rosemary than rosemary needs them to worry about it. That is what makes this plant special. Once it is rooted and established, rosemary almost prefers to be left alone. It does not need daily watering. It does not need overly rich soil. It also does not require constant fertilizing to grow. What it really loves is very simple. A place with plenty of sunlight, well-draining soil, and enough space to grow at its own pace. After that, you will see why rosemary appears in so many gardens. There are days when you forget to water. Most plants will quickly let you know, but rosemary often just keeps growing as if nothing happened. That is because of its origin. As a plant from the Mediterranean climate, rosemary is used to dry, sunny conditions. That is why too much care is not always the best thing. In fact, many beginner gardeners damage rosemary not because they care for it too little, but because they care for it too much. Watering too often, keeping the soil too wet, or trying to help the plant more than necessary. When what rosemary really wants is to grow naturally. And that is great news for busy gardeners, because this is one of the few plants where less interference often leads to better results. Once the plant is mature, you only need to cut a few sprigs when needed to season meat, roast vegetables, add fragrance to bread, or simply bring extra flavor to dinner. You do not need to harvest it all at once. You do not need to worry if you have not used it for a few days. The plant keeps growing green and healthy, quietly, and it is always ready whenever you need it. That is the kind of stability very few edible plants can offer. Maybe that is why so many people plant rosemary once, then leave it in a sunny corner for years afterward. It does not demand attention. It does not interrupt your schedule. It simply exists quietly and keeps bringing value. Number 3, mint. If you ask an experienced gardener what the hardest part of growing mint is, they will probably smile and say, the hardest part is not keeping it alive. It is keeping it from spreading everywhere. That is not a joke. It is the reason mint has always been considered one of the easiest plants for busy gardeners. While many plants make you worry about whether they have enough water, enough sun, or whether they are growing properly, mint seems to have only one thought: to keep growing. Give it a container, some soil, a few hours of sunlight each day, and a moderate amount of water. Before long, you will see new shoots appear. Then more shoots, new stems keep coming up from the base, and before you know it, lush green leaves have filled the container. That is why many experts recommend growing mint in pot. Not because it is hard to care for, but because if you plant it directly in the ground, it may spread faster than you expect. For busy gardeners, this is actually a major advantage. You do not need to spend much time helping the plant grow, because the plant almost does that by itself. If you forget to go out to the garden for a few days, mint keeps growing. If you miss a watering, it can often recover quickly once watered again. That is the kind of vitality very few edible plants have. Even better, you can harvest it almost any time. Cut a few sprigs for a cup of tea. Pick a handful of leaves for a fruit salad. Add it to lemonade, cocktails, sauces, or dessert. You only take what you need. The rest keeps growing. And before long, new stems grow back to replace what you cut. That is why mint almost always appears in gardens of people who love long-lasting, low-maintenance plants. It does not need much of your time. It does not require complicated techniques. It does not make you constantly watch over it. It simply grows quietly, day after day, and is always ready when you need it. Maybe the most interesting thing about mint is it is one of the few plants where success does not come from taking care of it more, but from knowing when to let it grow on its own. Number 2, Egyptian walking onions. On today's list, this may be the strangest plant of all. If you have never seen it before, you might think someone is joking, because instead of producing seeds like most other onions, it chooses a completely different way to keep itself going. And that is exactly what makes it one of the lowest maintenance plants you can grow. Imagine planting a clump of onions. You care for it as usual. Then by the end of the season, you do not need to sow more seeds. You do not need to divide the clump. You may not even need to replant it, because the plant has already started doing all of that on its own. Instead of producing seeds at the top, Egyptian walking onions grow small clusters of bulbils at the top of the stem. At first, they are tiny, but over time, they become larger and heavier. Eventually, the stem can no longer hold itself upright. It slowly bends down, bringing the entire cluster closer to the ground. When it touches the soil, those small bulbils begin to root. Then they grow into new plants. From a distance, it almost looks as if the onion is slowly moving to another spot in the garden. And that is exactly why it is called a walking onion. Not because it can truly walk, but because season after season, it quietly expands its growing area in a very unusual way. For a busy gardener, that is an incredible advantage. You do not have to start over from scratch every year. You do not have to worry about buying more seeds. You do not have to spend time starting new batches. Once it is established, this plant almost maintains its own population. Not only that, you can harvest it at different stages. The young green leaves can be cut and used like green onions, while the small top bulbils in the bulbs below the soil can also be used in cooking. That means from one plant, you get more than one kind of harvest. That is why many people, once they learn about Egyptian walking onions, see them as a secret worth giving a corner of the garden to. Not because they are famous, but because they are so smart. They do not make you constantly care for them. They do not force you to keep replanting. They simply grow quietly, propagate themselves, and each year they bring you more plants than the year before. Number 1, asparagus. Since the beginning of this video, we have talked about many incredible plants. Some tolerate drought very well. Some are almost unaffected by hot weather. Some keep producing for months. Some propagate themselves, and some practically take care of themselves. So what makes asparagus rise above all of them to take the number 1 spot? The answer is simple, because this is not just an easy vegetable to grow. It is an investment in the future. Most vegetables follow the same life cycle. You sow the seeds, care for the plants, harvest, then when the season ends, you start all over again the next year. That is the rule of almost every garden. But asparagus completely breaks that rule. It does not ask you to replant every year. It does not force you to keep sowing seeds. It does not make you rebuild everything after every season. Instead, it spends its first years doing something you can barely see. building an extremely strong root system beneath the soil. At first, this may feel like a delay. You will need patience, maybe more patience than with any other vegetable on this list. But that patience is exactly what creates the difference. Because once it is established, the plant almost begins to pay back all the time you invested. Every spring, when the garden is just waking up after winter, the first asparagus spears quietly push up from the soil. You harvest, you let the plant keep growing. Then the next year, they return again. And the year after that, they still return. It is almost as if the garden remembers. When spring arrives, it is time to send you another gift. That is what makes asparagus so special. Not because it gives the fastest harvest, not because it gives the biggest yield in just one season, but because it almost never asks you to start over. A properly cared for asparagus bed can continue producing for 15 to 20 years. Even longer. Think about that. The decision you make this spring may still be giving you fresh asparagus spears when many other plants have already been planted and pulled out dozens of times. That is why asparagus deserves the #1 spot. It does not just help you save work. It saves you time for years to come, and that is the true meaning of smart gardening. Not doing more, but choosing correctly from the very beginning. If there is one lesson today's entire list wants to leave you with, it is this. A productive garden does not necessarily have to be the garden that makes you work the hardest. Sometimes it is simply a garden planted with the right kinds of plants. Plants strong enough to forgive mistakes, tough enough to adapt to a busy schedule, and generous enough to keep bringing fresh food year after year, maybe a few years from now. When you step into the garden on a spring morning and see the first asparagus spears pushing up from the soil, you will remember that is exactly why asparagus deserve the #1 spot on this list. And those are 15 vegetables and edible plants that practically take care of themselves, helping you harvest more while doing less work. Perhaps the best thing about gardening is not having a huge garden. It is finding plants that fit your life. Plants that keep growing even when you are busy. Plants that still bring memorable harvests without demanding hours of your time in the garden every day. If you are just getting started, do not try to grow everything at once. Just choose 1 or 2 plants from this list, start with small wins. Then let your garden help you build more experience and confidence season after season. If you enjoy simple, practical gardening content that helps you harvest more with less effort, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope your garden stays green, healthy, and brings you many abundant harvests. I'll see you in the next video.